So right now we're close to $900,000 a day in revenue for the 25 employees, and that's how we run. So we have the biggest scale of revenue per employee that's a public Bitcoin miner.
Yeah. Um, okay. So first, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I've been following Hive closer this last month, and I saw that you guys had a Nasdaq listing, and that you're actually focusing as well on AI and green energy. So my first question is, how has Hive evolved from its beginnings to where it is now as a publicly traded company?
Well, Hive, I'm a money manager, and I was trying to launch a Bitcoin ETF in 2017 and realized it wasn't going to be able to get it through the SEC or the Canadian regulators because of AML and KYC risks back in 2017. So the idea of creating a Bitcoin mining company to be the first public mining company was Hive. And I know that when you mine a virgin coin. It's never been in cybersecurity, so you don't have a KYC or AML problem. So I want to get in the business, and I put up the first 5 million. 30 million came behind it. I was the co-investor and became the executive chairman. And Hive had a lot at the beginning of gold investors that were afraid to go on crypto exchanges. Everyone would talk about Mt. Gox, and they were just afraid. So Hive became the proxy. And we started in Iceland, and our strategy was to be green only energy. And then we went to Sweden, and at one time we were 6% of the global Ethereum network in mining. And as you know, Ethereum left and went from proof of stake to proof of work to proof of stake, and we started to rapidly expand our Bitcoin operations. And we, during the first halving that we experienced, we bought great opportunities in Montreal and Quebec, Canada. And then we bought in New Brunswick, and we expanded to 100 in Canada, about 130 megawatts of electricity, and we had about 35 megawatts in Sweden. And so we found after Putin invaded Ukraine, it was hard to get green energy. Everyone started becoming protective of their hydroelectrocarbons. And so along came the opportunity in Paraguay. And that was a win-win because Paraguay loves America, unlike Venezuela or Colombia. It's a strong relationship. They have a surplus green energy. And with Bitcoin mining, they get paid every month. They had been using some of the surplus electricity to sell to Argentina, and they weren't paid for $250 million is owed to them. Millet comes in and he turns it around and gives them some of their money back, but still, Bitcoin mining is much more stable for the government to run their fiscal policies, and we developed their infrastructure. So that was sort of the creation, and you ask the question so often is, why green energy? Well, it's interesting because Intel came to us because we were green. NVIDIA allowed us to buy their chips that could mine Ethereum and then other coins, altcoins, and go into AI. Hut 8, they wouldn't allow them because they weren't green. So being green has been very important to the semiconductor industry that makes the chips which are key for the future growth, in particular NVIDIA.
So, so in your experience, which country has been the easiest to mine in?
I think that they all have their challenges. There still is a choke point 2.0 in Sweden, using the tax authority to go after anyone in Bitcoin mining. They've also gone after anyone in private equity. And private equity is very big in data center business. When you're in the data center business, that's what really Bitcoin is. It's a data center. And it's a simplified, like a Bronco Jeep, Bronco truck, whereas GPU chips for AI or for mining Ethereum or altcoins, they're like driving a Porsche. They're more sensitive. There's more care and maintenance on them. And so we find that there still is this issue and debate in Sweden, in Canada, of getting back your taxes, with which they want to charge you a tax for bringing your equipment in the country, and they're supposed to give it back if you're a data center. But in Canada, if you're Bitcoin mining, they don't give it back. They want to fight you because they're still anti-Bitcoin. They have not woken up to America. And since President Trump passing 2 weeks ago the Genius Act, it's a game changer. So hopefully these other countries wake up to what's taking place on the Bitcoin ecosystem and the significance of Bitcoin mining.
So when you talk about high performance computing and these data centers, what do they mean exactly? What does it mean exactly?
I, well, you to validate a Bitcoin ecosystem, you need to have these, and to capture a new Bitcoin. As you know, the every 10 minutes it's like a jump ball in basketball,
Yeah,
to who's got the
lottery.
fastest machines to go and validate a transaction, unlock the combo, put the combination back, and it's very, very competitive. And that creates the hash difficulty that's around the world as more competition comes in. To do that, you need data centers, and the cost of electricity is the most important part. And what Bitcoin mining has done, it has found stranded electricity, it has found surplus electricity wherever it's not being used, and developed an ecosystem around the data center. So when you look today, what's happening in AI, Riot is a classic example of activist investors coming in to take a piece of the company and say you have to expand into AI, not Bitcoin mining. Why? Because Bitcoin mining actually built the platform to go into AI. So for your listeners, Cambridge University in England came up with a piece of research about 4 months ago. And in that research was the difference between a data center for Bitcoin mining and a data center for high performance computing. And high performance computing for AI is 33 times more expensive. Now, why is that? It's because when you do high performance computing, you have to be working all the time. When you're with Bitcoin mining, and we were the first of all the Bitcoin miners to balance the grid in Sweden, where we could sell back electricity to help when everyone needed this surplus electricity, and all of a sudden they turned on their toasters in the morning and needed a hot shower in the winter, we could go from 30 megawatts to 3 megawatts in seconds and give that electricity back to the community. Then there was a surplus of wasted electricity, we could tap into that. So Bitcoin mining is variable. It can go up and down. It's much more with software creative. HPC AI can't afford that. It has to be up all the time. And
Why? Why does it have to be up all the time?
well, just think of an airplane using AI, or a military setting up a missile can't all of a sudden say, sorry, we can't be down. Or surgeons operating on you and they're using AI, which they're doing more and more. They need to be uptime all the time. Hospitals are usually have the strongest electrical grid. The last place to cut electricity is around airports and hospitals. And all the hospitals have backup batteries and backup diesel generators in the event the electricity gets broken. So, for anything that has to do with AI, the use of the electricity is different. But let's talk about the AI difference. So simple terms. 1 megawatt for Bitcoin mining costs about $1 million of infrastructure and chips. AI, they call HPC, high performance computing, it's $10 million per megawatt for just the data center. If you want to go buy NVIDIA chips, they're not $3,000, they're $35,000 to $45,000 a chip. So the cost of getting into AI is much greater. Other big difference is when we get a package of ASIC chips and say Paraguay, in 6 hours, the technicians can unwrap them and plug them in to making cash flow. When NVIDIA chip arrives, it's 6 weeks before you can get cash flow because you're building a brain. It's so complex. There's all these intricate parts of the cabling and wiring between the CPU chips and the GPU chips and synchronizing the flow and the balance of electricity. And you need much more air conditioning because the brain gives off so much heat. Well, these NVIDIA chips give off so much heat, so you have to have this incredible refrigerator. It's a freezer. It's not a refrigerator for your milk and your cheese. No, no, you need a deep freezer because it gives off so much heat. So we all know that freezers cost a lot more money. And that's the big difference when you're looking at data centers for Bitcoin mining versus AI.
Crazy, crazy. So Hive is positioned for Bitcoin mining and AI data centers, two separate things.
Yes, and we call our AI business Buzz, Buzz, and it basically has about 10,000 customers around the world, and they rent by the hour our GPU chips. Whereas when we look at venture capital, there 70% of venture capital money is going into new AI ideas. And those companies don't want to get locked up with a long-term contract. So they come in contract for 3 months, 3 weeks with the money they have from their venture capital. And they're using and creating code and using our H100s and H200s. In the fall, Christmas time this year, we'll have Blackwells, which are the most complex of all NVIDIA chips to date. So that is what we've been doing, and we're in downtown Stockholm and downtown Montreal, Canada, and we're building near Boden our own data center for just HPC. It'll be something like less than 10 megawatts, which is like 100 megawatts for Bitcoin mining. The ratio of 10 to 1 is very important to when you're going to build these data centers. And so that'll be hopefully this time next year will be running and it will have a suite of our chips there. And then we're building in downtown Toronto. We bought an old Bitcoin mining facility near the downtown core and the airport, and we'll convert 40,000 square feet into 7.2 megawatts for high performance computing. But the really exciting part, besides that doubling this year, that business has been we're the fastest growing Bitcoin miner. And if you look at what Paraguay has gone from basically mining 3 Bitcoin a day after the halving to now 7 Bitcoin a day and growing, or going from less than 6 exahash, and now we're through 13 exahash. And we expect by the end of the summer to be up to 18 exahash and be close to 2% of the global network for Bitcoin mining. And by Christmas this year, we'll be at 3% of the global network for mining Bitcoin.
With 13 exahash.
Yes, with 25 exahash.
So it's like you have a portion of Sailor's influence almost on mining,
Yes, and we don't have an influence. We just become a bigger player that we can
a
mine and
bigger
put more
player.
Bitcoin on our balance sheet. Because we were the first crypto mining companies I mentioned earlier, and we used to hold Ethereum and Bitcoin. We sold all of our Ethereum at over 3,000, and we redeployed that into Bitcoin. And Bitcoin so far outperformed Ethereum, even though the new Ethereum ETFs are helping the Ethereum price. We think the real backbone to the crypto ecosystem clearly is Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, okay, so not to talk about other coins, because Bitcoin is primarily the coin I wanted to ask you about, but when you talk about other proof of work coins, is that something being spoken about at high levels?
Yeah,
Are we talking about Litecoin? Are we talking about Dogecoin and stuff like
yeah,
this?
we, we,
Casper as
we
well?
mine some Dogecoin, but the real part is that we're so big that when we started looking at some of these altcoins like Ethereum Classic, we have to be so careful that we don't become 50% of it because we have so much power. So we realized that, and what we were doing is mining. After Ethereum went away, we were mining a lot of altcoins using AI to say, okay, who has the highest margin for 24 hours? Because we have
Wow.
so much muscle. Like we're like an 18 wheeler, not a little tiny mini car. We're big. And
Wow. So
so we would come in to mine for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then go to another coin so that we didn't influence that coin because we would mine so much that we could sell it and we could depress the price. So we had to be very mathematical of who we mined, how we sold it, because we only want to have Bitcoin on our balance sheet.
so the real innovation, I guess, with Hive, going back to the listing and the value proposition in the listing is the actual ownership of these chips.
Yes,
And are these chips scarce or are they relatively easy to find?
the the the
The Porsches, like the ones
NVIDIA
that you were
chips.
talking about.
So when we first
Yeah.
started mining Ethereum, we had a special chip made by AMD, and we had 130,000 chips. It's huge. And
How many employees?
so what we found was that the memory on those chips was only 4 gigabytes, so it wasn't strong enough for as Ethereum grew, and you need a bigger memory chip. So then we said, let's start buying NVIDIA chips and start going and learning about AI before open chat. So we started going in and providing this service, and it started to grow. And so we just learned by building it. Now we've hired a president this year, Craig Tavares, who is building Apple data centers in Canada, and he's the president of Buzz, and he's doubled that business. So it's going to grow to 100 million. But for the Bitcoin mining, that's a different it's a different strategy, and we want to mine and put as much Bitcoin in our balance sheet as possible. And so far, we end up seeing we have the fastest growth of all the Bitcoin stocks this year in percentage terms. And I think next year, what we have planned, we could also do it again. But we're the only pure green energy. The rest have gone into in America, in particular. They don't care where the energy's from as long as you're mining Bitcoin.
And the pure energy, green energy that you're tapping into is mainly hydro, or is it also solar and wind and stuff like this?
We looked at solar, but it was not really price competitive.
Interesting.
As we saw the problems Spain had earlier this year, trying to go to only to wind and solar and have no nuclear and have no gas, all of a sudden they have blackouts everywhere. You can't. Spain earlier on had big blackouts in the country. Why was that? Because hydroelectricity runs 24/7. Hydro is so key. Nuclear runs 24/7. Gas can run 24/7. What happens with
Mm.
solar and wind, it doesn't run 24/7. It's predominantly when the sun is shining and there's a transition from fast winds to slow winds because of hot and cold movement. So therefore we looked at that and we said it's not the best for us, and we noticed other people in Texas, they've been very smart at this of getting solar and wind with gas. So the gas is always there moving, and they use wind and solar as a sort of a combination of all three. The biggest data center built in the world right now is in West Texas. It's $500 billion spend for open chat. 500 billion. It's called Stargate. And they're using wind and solar and gas because they have surplus natural gas. So that otherwise you need batteries. You need big battery stations. If the wind is not working or the solar is not working, you need to have the backup batteries. Well, that's also very intensive, and I believe the batteries cost a lot of carbon to make them. So we said, okay, let's keep our life simple. Let's look for just hydroelectricity or geothermal electricity. And Iceland was geothermal electricity.
Crazy. So basically, just work with nature as such and try and find a consistent outflow of energy.
Correct. And I see that Tether was smart. They went to El Salvador in a small scale, but they're using geothermal.
from the mining,
and
from the
volcano.
volcano. Yeah,
And so that's another way, but you still run the instability of shaking from a volcano. Um, and and if you're a
which you
public
don't with
company,
hydro.
you don't want to be making a press release, everything's shaking because the volcano's shaking. So we're sensitive over those things.
Very interesting. Going back to this buzz thing that you mentioned before. So so one of Hive's let's say core business is like an AWS for AI hosting for any
No,
LLM.
so far it's not. No, no, it's not like AWS. When it comes to AI, we own the chips, and and so that's the big difference. We don't. We just rent you by the hour our chips. AWS will co-locate with somebody else, and I think now they're getting into hyperscalers want to go and own their own data centers. And we saw Core Scientific being taken over by Core Weave, and that was all to get access to the electricity.
Crazy.
So,
So
and also Hive is listed in Germany, on the German market, Nasdaq, and Canada.
how many employees at Hive?
Pardon me?
How many employees at
A great
Hive?
question. We have the least number of employees. We have 25 key employees.
That's it.
That's it. And we will manage with software and firmware. The other contractor from Croatia runs our data center in Sweden. And so we have another group in Montreal. So we have other people that will run all those employees. We don't want to have HR. We want to have a bunch of engineers, electrical engineers and technical people at the hub. And it's very much like the gold royalty business, like Franco Nevada. They don't want to own the gold mine. They don't want to own the tractors and deal with the workers. No, they'll fund the company that will go do all of that. And so we do the funding for someone else to do all of that, so that our revenue last year was close to $6 million per employee.
Wow.
NVIDIA is 3.5 million. So we allow ourselves that every correction, every halving, we've always had operating income because we don't have a whole lot of key people in managing. We call Navy SEALs.
So you also don't suffer from grid shocks.
Pardon me?
You don't suffer from grid shocks like in Spain
No,
too.
no, no.
So it's
And,
just a consistent flow of everything,
and
basically.
we operate over 9 time zones, in 5 languages, and we're the most efficient miner. Anthony Power always writes about who's the most efficient miners for plugging machines and your electricity. You can calculate that efficiency ratio. We're number one, number two, number one, number one, and we're predominantly been the most efficient. And why is that? Is because of our culture of functioning like Navy SEALs. We meet every morning over 9 time zones. So you're in Europe, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 7 o'clock in Vancouver. We all talk every morning to know what happened in Sweden, what happened in Quebec, what happened in Paraguay. For 15 minutes, we all know, okay, we got this problem, we'll find a solution. And at the end of the day, which is 10 o'clock your time, we will then meet again and say, did we solve the problems, so that we are the most efficient miner?
Sounds super efficient. So as a treasury strategy, is Hive choosing to sell the Bitcoin that it finds, or is it choosing to sit on it?
It's twin engines you got to think of. We give two for one. You're getting a Bitcoin, green energy. You get three things. So the only green energy. We're hyperscaling on our AI business and our Bitcoin operations. The commonality is data centers. That's what's common. And there are differences in the values of the different data centers and different outputs. But we love the AI business, and we think that's going to be a long super cycle, whereas the Bitcoin mining creates a platform that down the road some of our Bitcoin data centers will become AI.
Okay, okay, okay. And
And that's what you're seeing now with Riot, and you're seeing with CoreWeave was a Bitcoin miner, and now all of its energy is going to be to redirect it and get rid of out of Bitcoin mining to be AI for CoreWeave.
does Hive have any plans to start becoming infrastructure providers, where clients can just come and buy the chips themselves
Yes.
as opposed to renting them out?
Yeah, well, right now we're the unique brand where you can come and not have to do a 2-year contract. So if you go get a Bloomberg machine to look at the stocks, etc., you have to guarantee Bloomberg for 2 years, and you have to pay every month. That's what happens with some of these big hyperscalers. You have to go into a long-term contract. With Buzz, you can rent by the hour, by the week, by the month, by the year. And if you month by the year, we give you a bigger discount. But if you're only going to rent by the hour, we're going to charge you the most. So we're the most flexible platform that allows anyone that wants to try a model for Bitcoin trading. Well, they want to try their model, they want to use our large language models, they can use that. And in Europe, they'd be tapping into our data centers in Sweden. In North America, they'd be tapping into our data centers in Montreal.
It's all very, like, it's a lot kind of thing for what Hive is doing. Um,
I think the most important thing to I've tried to explain to investors is the growth in revenue per share year over year. We'll have the fastest this year because we're growing our Bitcoin operation fourfold, and we've doubled and we'll probably threefold our AI business. So when you look at that momentum in revenue, and then we're seeing momentum in cash flow. So the cash flow is expanding. We started in March, our revenue was $110 million, and now it's running at 300 million. And
well,
by the end of the summer, it'll be at 400 million, where Bitcoin where it is today. And by Christmas time, it should be close to 500 million in revenue. So right now, we're close to $900,000 a day in revenue for the 25 employees, and that's how we run. So we have the biggest scale of revenue per employee that's a public Bitcoin miner.
and is that correlated to the price of Bitcoin?
It correlates. There's quant funds that move Hive around with Bitcoin, but I think they're missing it because data centers trade at a much higher multiple. If you look at Bitcoin miners on, say, revenue per, you usually have 5 times up to 7 times revenue for a data center. So that would say Hive should be at $1.5 billion. Hive should be at $6 a share right now. So there's 7 analysts have been saying that we're going to $10 to $12 because we have the strongest growth in revenue and cash flow. And what happens in the market as we prove this out on quarterly results, then all of a sudden it goes to a re-rating. Institutions start looking at it. But we publish every month what our production is, so it's easy to calculate. There's no inside information. It's really easy to figure out when we make a press release and we say every month, this is what our production is. You can calculate what that run rate is, and you can see that we give you the best bang for your dollar.
Two things. Do you think that Hive, the share price, let's say, will fluctuate if Bitcoin goes into, let's say, a yearly bear market like normal, even though maybe now it might not because of whatever. But in that case, even though the transactions are low, so for example, does that worry you in any way during this period, maybe?
I think short term, yes. Long term, no, because you can look at Iris Energy, that they're a Bitcoin miner, and they've been pushing to go into HPC, and so they've now got a huge valuation, and they never hold any Bitcoin. They do not hold it. They don't care. They mine it, sell it, and take that cash flow to expand in their AI business. So they're now getting a multiple that's higher than a Bitcoin miner. I think that's going to happen to Hive. I think that as we get the end of June numbers are coming out and the end of September numbers, that the world should be shocked Well, we've been doing it every month, explaining to investors. And institutions are always waiting till you get your final numbers out. And then they go, aha, I'm going to go in and buy. That's what they do.
Interesting. Um, is can Hive position itself to be a B2C where you sell like these small little solo mining rigs and people can also buy that
No, I don't
from
think.
Hive?
I think that that's too complex for us. You need to hire too many people to do that. If we're
Really?
really trying to have what's called scaling, and where can we scale the business without having thousands of employees? So we do know some of our competition that's out there, other peer group, they have 200, 300 employees. That's a lot of people to manage. And you know that the HR rules at Spain are different than Italy, and they're different than France, and they're different than Germany, and different than Sweden. We don't want to be distracted. We want to be focused on what's the best way to grow our Bitcoin, what's the best way to grow our HPC. And that's been sort of trying to keep it simple, that have just core people at the top making those decisions. What I love about Tether, which is a private company, that they made 13 billion last year with only 175 computer scientists. I mean, it's unprecedented that someone can make $13 billion, but that revenue per employee and profits is so important that it allows them to keep going out to different groups. They don't want to go and hire more and more people for the sake of hiring. They want to keep the nucleus, and they will invest. So they go to invest in gold. They go to invest in Bitcoin. And then they go invest in the infrastructure, or they fund a company like I think fund a Northern Data's AI business. So Northern Data is going to hire all the people and do all that. They're not going to be caught up with that. That's I believe, a smart business model to keep your core intellectual capital small, so that
Small and nimble.
you're nimble. Then you're like a Navy
Yeah.
SEAL.
And what about the heat? Can the heat be recycled?
Can you what? What was the question?
Can the heat be recycled into something innovative?
I think
Because
I
yeah.
think what's going to happen is it will end up becoming recognized as world-class data centers. And when that happens, this is really important. After Putin invaded Ukraine for the second time, the value of energy went up all over the world. Even New Zealand, so far removed. Why did it go up there? Everyone became protected, and the new word is sovereign. These are sovereign data centers. This is sovereign energy. And that psychology is basically saying, in America, Texas government does not want their data centers in Louisiana. Spain does not want to have their data centers in France. They don't want them in Italy. Everyone's protecting the data centers because data is becoming more and more valuable. If you look at China, it looks like a military compound around the data centers. And everything for the advancement of the military build out in Europe. And if you're going to go heavy into AI to rebuild your military, well, you need data centers. So now you need to have protected data centers. You need to have security. So we've seen that in Canada, and we've seen it in Germany, where Germany's now going to put 5% of their budget, GDP, into military spending. So what happened to military stocks in Europe? They doubled in 3 months. And who's the providers for the chips they're going to need for all that military? They have to think that way. Well, then they're going to need data centers. Where are they going to build their data centers, and how are they going to secure them? And in Canada, they're now going to spend from 25 billion to 150 billion in military, and they're talking about sovereign data centers. So the value of a data center, I believe, I was being early on Bitcoin in 2017 as an ETF guy. I think I'm trying to share with you that get into the Bitcoin data center. You're buying them for their data centers because they're going to become more and more valuable over time.
So Hive is not only a Bitcoin miner, it's also a data center provider that is
Yes,
necessary for all what's happening in the Trump shake with what's her name in Europe.
exactly, exactly. And,
Wow, that's crazy.
and every time
So,
now they know that if you use open chat, every time you go down and ask a question, you're drawing electricity and you're using
Exactly.
NVIDIA chips. Every time. Every question is sucking on energy and sucking on using GPU chips. Well, you look at Open Chat and they're up to $1 billion a month in revenue in 2 years. It's unprecedented. At the end of May, they were at a 10 billion, and now they're supposed to be running at $1 billion a month is the growth. But it's only because people all over the world are subscribing to using Open Chat.
So when you talk like this, I think to myself, how much competition does Hive have, and how rare are these chips that it owns?
It's a great question. When we first bought NVIDIA chips, which I mentioned earlier, to mine Ethereum, we got our money back, and then we went into AI, and then Open Chat became open to the world, and we just saw the demand pick up for AI. Well, those NVIDIA chips that we bought, in over 4 years, you depreciate them down to zero. Well, all of a sudden, those chips, we got all our money back. Someone bought our old chips, A40s, for what we paid for them, and then we bought H100s.
Wow, so they hold value
They
as
hold,
well.
yes, they held their value. So it was an interesting exercise in that sort of whole ecosystem, what you can do with those chips. And when you have a boycott against China and the chips, that it makes the more valuable. So immediately one of the Bitcoin miners went to the HPC, went to Iceland. And why Iceland? Well, all of a sudden in the past 3 years, Iceland has built, to have an HPC data center, you need to have a thick fiber optics, and they're called dense fiber optics. Otherwise, all your data can be stuck in the data center. You can't move it. You can't send it across the world. And so what happened in Iceland is that they have two different types of dense, and one came from Japan. So all of a sudden, Japan was using Iceland to be able to tap into NVIDIA chips.
So the whole world is on it at the
Yeah,
moment. The ones with natural resources.
because they have two sources. So to have high performance computing, you need two sources of internet, and you need two sources of fiber optics, and you need backup generators and backup batteries so that it runs 24/7. And so you couldn't do this 4 years ago in Iceland because they didn't have two sets of pipes coming in. And now they have it coming from Europe, from North America, and from Japan.
Wild. There's a lot going on under the hood,
So now
basically.
you're in Malta, so we have to take a look at what's the fiber optics and what's the density of fiber optics. Are they coming from Italy and from France? And so you have two different sources of internet, and you have two different sources of fiber optics that are dense fiber optics, not the old fiber optics. Then you can build a high performance computing data center in Malta.
Even with the heat that we have.
Yeah, yeah, you could do that, but you'd have to have backup for everything. You'd need solar, you'd have to have wind, and you'd probably need backup diesel. Because I don't think you have natural gas coming into Malta, do you?
We don't have much. We have potatoes.
In the Adriatic, you can get natural gas, but you can't get that in that part of the Mediterranean. So it's just recognizing that you just can't put a data center. When we looked for high performance computing in New Brunswick, where we have 80 megawatts, we said, okay, let's make 20 into high performance computing right away. We realized that there was no high performance dense fiber optics. So it was stranded. You have build a data center and you put those expensive chips there, but you can never move the data out.
So barrier to entry is high, very
Yes.
high.
So now the
So you
government.
have first mover advantage.
So when
Yeah.
a Bitcoin miner says, "Yeah, we're getting in the business," you have to scratch your head and say, "It's 6 weeks, not 6 hours to plug in the machines, and you have to have fiber optics with dense fiber optics." In Sweden, where we're located, we're 30 kilometers from Facebook's data center. we're 30 kilometers from a big technology university and a military town. So there's dense fiber optics everywhere. So it made it easy to build a high performance computing data center in Bowdoin.
Wow. Okay. So, um, let's assume. So, is the Hive stock ever going to be traded against BTC? Is this in the
I think
pipeline?
in short term it's going to trade with BTC, and I think long term is going to go to data center valuations, and that will take it to more than $10 a share. If I was to compare it to the big data center, just pure data center companies, then it's deeply undervalued. Because Bitcoin's so volatile, then they say the revenue cash flow is a lower value. That's what Mr. Market says. But as you become recognized for as a data center, then all of a sudden you get a higher rating. So as our AI business builds out and Bitcoin trades higher, then we're going to go through this new evolution. It's an evolution. It's a technological evolution on the value of your data center.
Why? Because it's 10 to 1 and it's like water. You need it all the time. So, that's the revenue coming in.
Well, HPC revenue is more stable than Bitcoin, but I think that Bitcoin's so undervalued that the cheapest stocks out there are Bitcoin miners. They're the cheapest.
I know that. I was looking at
They're
them.
just
Okay, last question. Last question. What's a true valuation right now? Let's say for what you think Bitcoin should be worth, and where can you see Hive go in the next year, five?
I think I agree with a lot of the industry analysts. There's seven of them calling it $10 to $12 a share. And I scratch and I say, well, that would be 4 times future revenue. That would be 10 times cash flow. And data centers trade at 20 times. So I think that it's very easy forecast of saying $10 a share.
Excellent, excellent. And as a company, you will just continue focusing on what you're doing now, and
Yeah,
it is going
yeah.
to
Because the wind
basically
is hitting our back.
service all this
Bitcoin's
under the hood.
Bic, Bitcoin's going to trade higher and higher, and data centers are going to become more and more valuable. So the first mover advantage is get the electricity, then get the land, and then start to build a data center. The least expensive way is Bitcoin mining. Get your money back for building the basic data because when in Paraguay we have to build a substation. That's $15 million per megawatt. That's 100 megawatts of electricity. You have to build. Do you understand the step down? So the electricity comes high voltage. It would blow up a toaster, a hair dryer. It would blow it up. So you have to have what's called a step down. So you need a substation, and then you need transformers to make the electricity not so powerful. And so they cost millions of dollars to build, but you need them also for HPC. So Bitcoin mining is the stepping stone for HPC.
Amazing. Um, Thank you so much,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Frank Holmes. Really interesting, and good luck and well done on the listing.
Look up. That's how high Bitcoin's going.
Thank you so much, Frank. This has been a really interesting and fun conversation.
Anytime.